Hey there, Kevin from Happy Coding here. And over the last few days, I've been doing something called January, where each day in January, you get a different prompt. And so the last few prompts have been stuff like a particular palette, drawing a line with wrong answers only. And I've done a few of those so far, and you can look through the past videos or go to happycoding.io to see those. And so today I think I'm going to keep going with that. And today's prompt is 500 lines. And I thought about a couple different options I could play with here. A lot of my previous January projects have involved lines, and I could maybe adapt one of those. I also thought of maybe like what could I do with 500 lines of code, something like that. But I think I'm probably gonna go and keep it a little bit more fundamental today. And my idea is to create a color gradient using 500 lines. So I'm going to draw 500 lines. The first line is going to start at one color, and then the last line will be a different color, and all of the lines in between will go from the first color to the second color in sort of a gradient pattern. So I'm jumping over here to the P5 editor, and I know that I want at least one of my, either my width or height to be 500. And I think what I'll do, I think I'll make my height 500. Honestly, the reason for that is on Happy Coding, I try to embed the code, and 500, it gets a little too wide. So I think 300 or 400 is kind of the sweet spot for this looking nicely in my website. But it's kind of an artificial constraint, but I mean, that's why I'm going to go with height being 500 instead of the width. So now I've got a canvas that's 250 pixels wide and 500 pixels tall. And what I want to do is draw lines that go from the top to the bottom, sort of horizontally. So what I can do is create a for loop that loops from y equals 0 to y is less than height. So all the way down to height, and increase by 1 each time. And I could do like line from 0y to width y. And what I should see now is I think the screen will just fill with black because I'm just drawing a bunch of black lines. And yeah, that's right. I think it might be not quite black because there's some anti-aliasing happening. So maybe if I go to no smooth, that'll be even darker, I think. I honestly can't tell. Maybe not. But it doesn't really matter. So I've got these lines drawn, and to sort of prove that that's what's happening, I could increase this by 10 each time instead of 1, and you'll see the individual lines a little bit better. I might play with that, but I think for now I'm going to stick with drawing one at a time. So from here, what do I want to do? I think I want to create maybe 2 variables, or I'm debating whether I want to store them in color variables or in RGB variables, and I think maybe what that will come down to is one of these handy functions that P5 gives you is lerp color, which helps you create gradients. And let's see what this takes. So it takes 2 colors, but you know what? I think I'm just going to, for now, I'm going to do separate variables. Top R, top R, G, and B. I always mix up G and B. I messed it up in the last video, and I didn't notice until after I finished it, but hopefully I don't make that same mistake today. So I'm going to just create separate variables for RGB for my top and bottom color. Bottom B, and I could set these to, I'm just going to set them maybe in here. So top R equals, let's start it at like top G equals 0, top B equals 0. So I want to go from like red to blue maybe. I don't know if this copy paste is going to save me any time or not, but I'm lazy. So bottom red is 0, bottom green is 0, and bottom B is 255. All right, so we've got our variables, and now what do I want to do? I want to use those variables down here. And what I want to do is say, so I know that I split these up into separate variables, and I did that because later I want to mess around with those a little bit more, and I think keeping them separate will make my life easier in the long run. But for now, I'm actually going to just kind of undo that down here and say const top color equals color top R top G top B. Yell at me if I mix up the G and B, or yell at me in the comments, I guess. Bottom R, bottom G, bottom B. So now I have them stored in color variables, and the reason for that is now I can use this handy lerp color. So I go from my top color to my bottom color, and my amount will be between 0 and 1, okay? So I can do something like this, line color equals lerp color from top color to bottom color, and my amount will be, so I want a number between 0 and 1, and so I think I want like y divided by height. So when y is 0, this value will be 0. When y is height, this value will be 1. So that's how I get my number between 0 and 1. All right, so I got my line color, and maybe let's just use it. So let's call like stroke line color. So now I think I might be pretty much done, actually. Let me clean this up just a little bit and hit run and see what breaks. Nah, that actually worked pretty well. Cool. So what we see is we start out with the top RGB of just red and a bottom RGB of straight blue. And because we are drawing a different colored line from 0 to 500, we see this sort of progressive, this gradient from red to blue, mostly powered by this lerp color function. I could take this apart and calculate it myself. The math is not super complicated. It basically like subtracts the difference between each component and then increases the lower one by how far into the range you are. But I've got lerp color, so I might as well use it. So I'm already pretty happy with this. Like I said, I think today will be a little bit more fundamental. So this already accomplishes a lot of what I wanted to do. But just for fun, let me maybe start them out randomly. So you know I love random colors if you've seen any of my other videos, and today is not going to be any exception to that rule. So now I'm starting out my top color and my bottom color at random colors, and so every time I run, I will see something a little different, and this one's pretty cool. I like this. So I could just run it a few more times. That's cool. That's gross. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I could honestly end here and say, like, here's how you create a gradient. You draw lines from one value to another value, and you use something like the lerp color function to calculate the colors as they progress from the top to the bottom, or from the left to the right, or whatever, however your pattern goes. But one thing I want to maybe play with next is the idea of animation. So right now I create my top and bottom colors and I set them to a random number, and then I never ever change them. And like I said, I think that's cool. I think that could work for like a background for a sketch or something. But just to make it a little more interesting, I'm going to play around with the idea of changing them over time. And so I'm going to do something very similar to what I did for the random looper or the random walker example. So you can go back and watch that video, or you can go to Happy Coding and kind of steal the code from there. But random walker kind of changes the color of the line as it navigates around this space. So I might actually just straight up copy the code here. So what I want to do is add a little bit of random to my variables and then constrain them. So like top R, top G, top B, and I want to do this for the bottom as well, but maybe for now I'll just do the top B, RGB, RGB, top R, top G, top B. I think I might end up just copy pasting this for the bottom, since it's only like 6 lines of code and they're like relatively similar. I could like extract this into a function or something, but it doesn't really matter. All right, so now what I should see is my top value should kind of change over time, and let's see if that holds true. So it is kind of fluctuating. It's maybe changing a little too slowly for my tastes. So I might increase this a little bit. Maybe that's too much. It's kind of flashy. Sorry about that. So I could play with these parameters quite a bit. I'll try to hold off on that. It's kind of flickering. I kind of want something a little smoother than that, though. Maybe 2. Maybe I might even change it back to 1, but you can see that over time the top color is changing, and that means that our gradient is also changing. So I could sit here for a minute and kind of just wait for it to cycle through all the colors to double check that this is working how I expect it to. And while I'm doing this, maybe let me just double check that I've got everything in order. So top RGB, top RGB, top RGB. Yeah, I don't see anything super obviously wrong. So I do think it's working. I think that maybe the randomness is a little jarring or a little flickery, but I'm not too worried about it. So the next thing I want to do is maybe do the same exact thing for bottom, my bottom color. So bottom RGB, bottom RGB, bottom R, bottom G, and bottom B. And I need to change these to bottom R, bottom G, and bottom B. All right. So yeah, I'm just doing the same exact thing for the top and the bottom. So now I should see kind of the gradient change from both sides. So ooh, that's a cool one. I like that. So it starts out green and pink, and let's just sit here for a minute and kind of see where it goes. Yeah, it's kind of just staying green and pink. I think I might have seen some blue in there for a minute, but I don't know. I think this 2 might not be enough. So let me create a variable to make this a little easier to play with. So now I've extracted that value into a variable, and I've changed it to 5. So you can kind of see that it is changing, but it's I don't know, it's kind of not changing enough. And yeah, you can kind of see it now. Now it's kind of flashy. I kind of like this, and I'll likely end up posting just still images rather than animated GIFs for this particular exercise. So I'm not super worried about what it looks like in the in between. So I might just right click and save as a still image a couple times. But I am kind of annoyed by the like flickering nature of it, and I think that's because I'm kind of just really randomly changing it. So oh man, there's a couple things I could try in the reference. This gets into some areas that I don't use very often, but I know that there's different kind of random functions. So I know there's random Gaussian, I think is how you say that word, and this number gives you this function gives you a number that's sort of between -1 and 1, but it kind of stays closer to 0 more often. So I think that this gives you kind of a bell curve. I think that's kind of what Gaussian means. Let me just kind of double check that. Yeah, okay. So instead of giving you the whole range between like -5 and 5, it will give you that range, but it'll kind of center around 0. So let me try that a little bit, and man, it's going to be annoying. But what I want to do is say something like random Gaussian, and can I give this a range? No. Actually, yes. If I do 0 and 5, right? I think, like I said, I'm not super familiar with this function, so I want to try it, see what it does, see what it takes me. So now instead of going like anywhere from -5 to 5, I'm centering it a little bit more. And I don't know about that. That might be too much, but it is a little different. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's kind of just down to the power of random. The other thing I could do is play with a function that I'm even less familiar with, and that's the noise function. And noise gives me a value that's, where is it? It's between 0 and 1, but it's based off of a parameter, and it'll kind of give you this kind of smoother animation style. So let me think about how I want to use this. So noise of, so this gives me a number between what, 0 and 1? Okay, so what do I want to do with a number between 0 and 1? I want to, first let's maybe just store it in a variable. So const r, let's call it like noise r, maybe I'll change that later, but noise of like frame count divided by 100, something like that. I think you generally want the number you pass in to not increase very much. So yeah, they do like times 0.02, so I might do something like that. Yeah, something like that. Whatever, I'm gonna just try something. So I've got a number between 0 and 1. It's kind of random, and what do I want to do with that? I want to take that, and so what I can do, since it's between 0 and 1, if I do 0.5 minus that number, now I have a number that's between -0.5 and 5, and I can then multiply that value by my range. Maybe I'll change that. So if I multiply it by 2, so noise gives me a number between 0 and 1. I take 0.5 and I subtract that noise. So now this whole thing gives me a number between negative 0.5 and positive 0.5. I multiply that by 2 to give me a value between negative 1 and 1. And then I multiply that by range so that I can get my number sort of between negative 5 and 5 if I want to increase it. So all of that to say, I can now plus equals NR on each of these. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I almost never use this noise function, mostly because I kind of stick with just the straight random function, but the random function does have this kind of side effect of being a little bit, I don't know the word for it, jaggier, like from one step to another. And I believe that the noise function is like, it solves for that a little bit better. So let's just see. And maybe it's a little suspicious that it's just getting darker and darker. Maybe that's just because that was the direction it chose. And no, I'm very suspicious of this, unless it comes back and gets lighter again. Let me try to run that again. So all right, maybe that was just random because now it's getting lighter and lighter. Although, okay, noise will kind of tend to go in a direction for a while and then come back. So that is actually kind of what I wanted, but I think maybe I want this number to be a little bit smaller. So now the noise function will kind of go up and down, but it's a little bit faster now since I'm stepping over a larger distance each time. And yeah, I think this is a little better than when I was just doing straight negative 5 to 5. I think it's a little bit more, it's less extreme. I don't love that it kind of just hangs out like at a color for a while, goes off in a direction and stays there. That is kind of an artifact of what I wanted, but the downside of that is that it's like, it's kind of stuck up here at white for a while. It will eventually come down, but I don't love that it just kind of is stuck. So I might go back to what it was before. I also have a vague idea that noise generally, instead of like using it to add a value to something each time, you instead take that value as your sort of multiplier. So I could try that. I don't know if this video is going to end up being very interesting because I'm just kind of playing with the different random functions and I honestly don't really know what I'm doing with them. But let's just try something. So instead of saying plus equals, let me try just equals. And instead of, so this gives me a value between 0 and 1, and I can now do something like this. So my range is 255 because that's, 0 to 255 is what I want, and now this will give me a number between 0 and 1, so this will fluctuate between 0 and 255 without like the goofy kind of adding logic that I had, which was why this is just going straight white or straight black. And that's way too much now, so I need to decrease this number or increase the number that I pass in. So I think that might be down to random. Let's wait for like a more colorful option. I don't know why these are all black. Maybe that's again down to randomness. Oh, I know why. Duh. Okay. So basically what I need to do is, oh man, this is getting really complicated, but so I've calculated NR here and I'm just using it for all of my colors. Instead, I need to sort of recalculate it for each of my colors, and I will go back and clean this code up in a second, but for now, just to get something working, let's do something like this. comment out some of this stuff, and yeah, and I should have changed this to M while I was at it so I can fiddle with this number a little bit easier. M. All right, so now my top R, my top G, and my top B will all have this kind of randomly fluctuating value. And actually, God, man, I realized that this will just be the same every single time. So what I might need to do is have like an offset variable. Oh man, this is getting complicated. So what I need to do is offset the number I'm passing in here by some value. So maybe what I'll do is something really goofy. I'll just say like, let's see if this works. So actually I can do 0 here. I can actually, I don't care about that one at all. So this is 0. This is, maybe I'll do 1000 plus 2000 plus. So I'm just like moving them away from each other so that they all have like their own sort of space in the noise function. So I don't want to pass in the same exact function into it's not where I need that to be. I don't want to pass in the same value into the noise function because I'll just get the same returned value. So I'm giving this an offset so that each variable starts out at a random position and then kind of fluctuates from there. So this is getting confusing, but let's just see what this does. Yeah, I think that's better. So from here, what I could do is play with some of these numbers. So it's kind of fast at this point. So I could slow it down by increasing this number. And now it's maybe a little too slow. So I could maybe cut it in half. And that's kind of at a good level. I kind of like that. Yeah, I think that's right. So you see that it's not going straight white, it's not going straight black, it's kind of fluctuating a little bit more and, you know, bouncing back and forth between a few colors, and it's not so flickery because the noise function gives me kind of a smoother transition from one color to the other, to the next. So what I might do is I'm going to clean this code up quite a bit. So I think I am going to stick with this noise function. Partially because I don't use it very often, so I think it's kind of interesting to play around with. And it does mean that I can get rid of a lot of this old code, so let me kind of clean this up. And I no longer need to constrain them because that's kind of an artifact of how I constrained it here. Like it won't give me a number outside of 0 or 255, so I can kind of change these since it doesn't really make sense for this to be a variable anymore. All right. Yeah, man, I kind of like that. That was kind of a really long path to find something that I enjoyed. But that's part of what coding is, honestly. Like, I didn't know what my code would look like ahead of time, and a big part of coding is figuring it out as you go. So, actually I realized that I don't need any of this stuff anymore. It's beautiful. I guess that's kind of the power of the noise function, is you don't have to kind of keep track of all this stuff yourself. So I can create them each time. So like the noise function itself keeps track of like the previous values and that's how it gets that smooth like transition. It doesn't actually keep track of any values. It just like there's some math inside of it that means that it bases the randomness off of the value you give it. So that's how it kind of works internally. But for me, that means I don't need to keep track of stuff myself. And I probably broke something, but let's just run it and see. And nah, man, that works. Cool. So there you have it. There's a nice like random gradient in 26 lines of code. That's not bad. Most of that power comes down to this lerp color function, and the randomness comes down to this noise function. So we're like asking p5 to do a lot of the work for us, but that's kind of the beauty of using a library. You don't have to do a lot of that stuff yourself. Anyway, so from here, I think this is pretty much what I'm going to post. I think this is about right for me. I'm going to probably just sit here and watch it for a while and save it whenever it looks particularly interesting. I might play with the width a little more, so I could increase this to like 500. You know, I don't know. It's kind of up to like artistic choice, like what size you want your width to be, because the 500 is my height, and that's what I sort of got from January. 500 lines. This is 500 lines. So from here, you know, I could play with this value a little bit more. I could play with these values a little bit more. I kind of just like how it is now. You could do something like introduce a middle color and then base your gradient off of that. So right now I'm going from whatever the top color is down to whatever the bottom color is. So from here, it's like kind of this brownish, orangish color down to blue. I could put another sort of step in there in the middle so that the gradient would look, you know, maybe a little more interesting. But I don't know. I kind of like how it is now. But you could play with that if you're curious. You would have to change the for loop a little bit to make that work, but it's doable. Some other ideas could be playing with like right now I'm just giving it full run of 0 to 255, and it could be that you want your top value to be more red. So let me maybe decrease my G and B, and your bottom color to be more blue, but still have some randomness to it. So that would look something like this. And maybe that was a little too constrained. It'll be a little bit darker, but the idea is that you can play with these values and get different outputs. So that's kind of cool, actually. But I think I want to stick with just straight random because that's kind of my deal. Yeah, man, I like that. This actually ended up being pretty cool. I was a little grouchy about the flickering originally, but I think that using the noise function really takes this to the next level and makes it really cool. So I'm actually really happy with this. Another thing I wanted to mention is there's all kinds of sort of artistic ways you could use this. So you could use this as like a background to your sketch. Whether that's randomly like animated or just a straight gradient that you save and you reuse. That's one thing you could do. There's this Twitter bot that I follow that I kind of really enjoy, and in theory it's like sunrise sunset bot, but like in practice this is pretty much a gradient. I think maybe they have some fancy like circular gradients or radial gradients, but you know, you could do something like this where you generate sort of a styled gradient. So maybe your gradient isn't just random colors, maybe it's a sunset or a sunrise or, you know, a cloudy day, something like that. Lots of stuff you could do with that, but I'm pretty happy with this. So I'm going to call it here, I think. From here, let's see. So today was 500 lines. Tomorrow is make a grid of permutations of something. That's kind of interesting. It's a little similar to a project I did a few days ago, which was where is it? down here, draw city. This is kind of a permutation of like different houses. So I might revisit this, or I might do something else. We'll see, but that's a tomorrow problem. But for now, I'm pretty happy with this, so I think I want to sign off. So as always, if you have questions, or if you have comments, or if you just want to come say hi, you can leave them in the comments of the video, or you can come say hi on Happy Coding, come to our forum, come say hi. But for me, I'm going to sign off and say thanks for watching, have a great day, and happy coding.